Okay, so now I have my version of EKG. If you know anything about heart rate, you know that this person is sick. Something wrong going on here. But for all those who don't understand, I think this might look backwards. I hope it doesn't look backwards for you. Because the way I'm seeing it, it looks like the T is coming first. The T should not go first. I hope that's not what I thought it was. I'm really sorry if that's what's going on. The P is the little bump in the beginning. The QRS is the big jagged part in the middle, and the T is the part afterwards. So let's move on. I told you about how to walk it out. Now walk it out. Right. So as long as it walks out, then your rate is regular. If it doesn't walk out, your rate is irregular, and that's something to pay attention to in children, and I guess in some adults, but from what I've been told, mostly in children, sometimes when they breathe, the rate will be a sinus rhythm, which means that it's starting where it's supposed to start at the top, at your atrium, which is a normal, regular rhythm, but it won't walk out because when they take a breath, it's gonna squeeze their little heart and it's gonna beat a little faster. And then when they breathe out, then there's gonna be more room. It's gonna be looser in there, and the heart's gonna be beating slower. So that's something that you might wanna be mindful of. That's nothing that needs to be treated, but like I said, in the EKG, it won't walk out. It's not like some horrible rate that you need to go, oh my God, give him a shot. It's not the case. Um, so when you are looking at your strip, you have to know that there are a bunch of little squares. It's gonna look like a little sheet of graph paper, and there's going to be a whole bunch of tiny little squares, tiny little squares. Those teeny tiny little squares all equal 0.04 seconds, milliseconds, at least when you're going this way. Not necessarily when you're going that way, but I guess it's kind of, this way is like the amps, milliamps, this way is the milliseconds, so it's time. When you see 5 of those teeny weeny little boxes together, you'll see a heavy line. That is to tell you that now it's zero point 0.2 seconds. So the little teeny bitty squares, 0.04 seconds. A bigger box that would contain 5 by 5 squares, that would be zero point 0.2 seconds. Now on your test, on your average test, supposedly, you will have a 6-second strip. But you can't always assume that it's a 6-second strip. I think the way they were saying that you would know is that if it's 30 of the large squares. So if you have a strip in front of you and you count out 30 of those large squares, that should equal 6 seconds. Sorry if I'm wrong. These are all important so that you can know how to read your EKG, because everything is timed. A normal, in order for you to know whether your heart is beating normally, everybody's heart pretty much beats around the same, within the same time frames. So you need to be able to count out the times to make sure the heart is beating normally. If it's not beating normally, to be able to time how the heart is beating is one of your ways of telling what kind of rhythm it's in, which will help you determine what kind of disease process they're going through. So you need to know those boxes. So like I said, 0.04 is a tiny one. zero point 0.2 is the big one, which has 5 boxes, 5 by 5 boxes. And then your strip, your average strip should be 6 seconds. Now, there are several ways of determining what your heart rate is. My favorite way is what they call the rule of tens, I think. That is, you take your 6-second strip, you know at 6 seconds, you count out how many QRSs you see, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 70 beats per minute. Boom. Simple, right? But other people don't like that because they want to do extra work. So for those of y'all who want to do extra work, You can do what we call the rule of 300. And I wonder if I have that down. I'm supposed to know this. So the rule of 300, you're using the big squares that are the 5 by 5 squares. When you get that strip, you look at it and you count the big squares. You start at the top part of your QRS. So this is your QRS right here. You start here. Ooh, my finger. You start here, and then you start counting big boxes. Obviously, I don't have any big boxes, but you're going to start here, whoop, and you're going to keep going till you get to your next QRS. Okay? So the top part of your QRS. You start at that QRS, that's your baseline. You count. Once you hit that next heavy line, you say 300. Why? Somebody brilliant invented this up. Once you get to the next line, you say 150. Why? Because they're brilliant. When you get to the next line, you say 100. Point is, you keep counting by heavy lines until you reach the next QRS. Wherever that QRS falls on, that is your rate. So say you count 3 boxes, 3 heavy lines between one QRS and the next. You go boom, 300, boom, 150, boom, 100. This heart rate is 100. It's a lot of work, but people say it's more accurate than the 10-second rule. 10-second rule never failed me. There's another rule that I think is probably something that I wouldn't mind using as long as I have my trusty calculator around. Like, oh my God, we're in a code. Let me calculate this up real quick. This is called the rule of 1500s. So with this rule, you start at the top of your QRS, or some people start at the bottom, which is your R. You count from one QRS to the next, and you count the little boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever. You count how many little boxes there are, and then you divide it by 1500. And it equals your heart rate. But it's easier to remember, so at least that way you don't have to remember, because the other one, the rule of 300s, it goes 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50, 43. Nothing really makes sense. And it's really hard to remember. 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50, 43. So good luck for those who like that. The 1500 is easier for me to remember. You just count every little box and you divide it by 1500. Obviously, it's not something that you can do right, there. It's, to me, I like the 10-second rule because I can look and say, oh my God, that person's bradycardic, Whereas if I'm like, hold on, let me count all of these little tiny boxes and let me get my trusty calculator out and let me divide it by 1500 and I'll get back to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you need to move, you need to move. But, it's still something that somebody may test you on. Like me. So anyways, those are important ways to be able to measure your strip. Now we can talk about the basic rhythms that you have. So you have your tachycardias, which is fast. Then you have your normal sinus rhythms, which are normal. And then you have your bradycardias. Brady always means slow. When I first started nursing school, I always, to try to help me remember it, I said, well, the Bradys on the Brady Bunch seem a little slow to me. So that's how it always helped me to remember Brady, slow, tacky, like something's tacky, tacky's fast. Your fast is going to be anything above 100. Anything above 100 is fast. Your normal is 60 to 100. And then your slow is technically anything above 60. When you can see some like healthy athletes that have a heart rate of 40 and 50, it's true. Sometimes some collegiate, some Olympians, people who run every day, their heart rates may run at like 52, and that's perfectly normal, nothing to freak out about. But that's a bradycardia, technically.